Daughter nuclide, nuclide that is produced in a nuclear decay. Debye, the unit used to express dipole moments. Delocalization of electrons refers to bonding electrons that are distributed among more than two atoms that are bonded together. Occurs in species that exhibit resonance. The formation of a set of molecular orbitals that extend over more than two atoms, important in species that valence bond theory describes in terms of resonance. Denaturation, a process pertaining to a change in the structure of a protein form regular to irregular arrangement of the polypeptide chains. Denatured, a commercial term used to describe ethanol that has been rendered unfit for human consumption because of the addition of harmful ingredients to make it sales tax exempt. Density, mass per unit volume, that is, D is equal to m by V. Deposition, the direct solidification of a vapor by cooling, that is, the reverse of sublimation. Derivative, a compound that can be imagined to arise from a parent compound by replacement of one atom with another atom or group of atoms, used extensively in organic chemistry to assist in identifying compounds. Dermal toxicity, adverse health effects resulting from skin exposure to a substance. Designated area, an area that may be used for work with carcinogens, reproductive toxins, or substances that have a high degree of acute toxicity. A designated area may be the entire laboratory, an area of a laboratory, or a device such as a laboratory hood. Detergent, a soap-like emulsifier that contains a sulfate, SO3, or a phosphate group instead of a carboxylate group. Deuterium, an isotope of hydrogen whose atoms are twice as massive as ordinary hydrogen. Deuterium atoms contain both a proton and a neutron in the nucleus. Dextrorotatory refers to an optically active substance that rotates the plane of plane polarized light clockwise, also called dextro. Diamagnetism, weak repulsion by a magnetic field. Differential scanning calorimetry, DSC, a technique for measuring the temperature, direction, and magnitude of thermal transitions in a sample material by heating or cooling and comparing the amount of energy required to maintain its rate of temperature, increase or decrease, with an inert reference material under similar conditions. Differential thermal analysis, DTA, a technique for observing the temperature, direction, and magnitude of thermally induced transitions in a material by heating or cooling a sample and comparing its temperature with that of an inert reference material under similar conditions. Differential thermometer, a thermometer used for accurate measurements of very small changes in temperature. Dilution, process of reducing the concentration of a solute in solution, usually simply by mixing with more solvent. Dimer, molecule formed by the combination of two similar identical molecules. Dipole refers to the separation of charge between two covalently bonded atoms. Dipole-dipole interactions, attractive interactions between polar molecules, that is, between molecules with permanent dipoles. Dipole moment, the product of the distance separating opposite charges of equal magnitude of the charge, a measure of the polarity of a bond or a molecule. A measured dipole moment refers to the dipole moment of an entire molecule. Dispersing medium, the solvent-like phase in a colloid. Dispersed phase, the solute-like species in a colloid. Displacement reactions, reactions in which one element displaces another from a compound. Disproportionation reactions, redox reactions in which the oxidizing agent and the reducing agent are the same species. Dissociation, in aqueous solutions, the process in which a solid ionic compound separates into its ions. Dissociation constant, equilibrium constant that applies to the dissociation of a complex ion into a simple ion and coordinating species, that is, ligands. Distillant, the material in a distillation apparatus that is to be distilled. Distillate, the material in a distillation apparatus that is collected in the receiver. Distillation, the separation of a liquid mixture into its components on the basis of differences in boiling points. The process in which components of a mixture are separated by boiling away the more volatile liquid. Domain, a cluster of atoms in a ferromagnetic substance, all of which align in the same direction in the presence of an external magnetic field. Donor atom, a ligand atom whose electrons are shared with a Lewis acid. D orbitals, beginning in the third energy level, a set of 5 degenerating orbitals per energy level, higher in energy than s and p orbitals of the same energy level. Dosimeter, a small calibrated electroscope worn by laboratory personnel and designated to detect and measure incident ionizing radiation or chemical exposure. Double bond, covalent bond resulting from the sharing of 4 electrons, that is 2 pairs between 2 atoms. Double salt, salt consisting of 2 co-crystallized salts. Doublet, 2 peaks or bands of about equal intensity appearing close together on a spectrogram. Downs cell, electrolytic cell for the commercial electrolysis of molten sodium chloride. DP number, the degree of polymerization, the average number of monomer units per polymer unit. Dry cells, ordinary batteries, that is voltaic cells for flashlights, radios and so on. Many are Leclanché cells. D transition elements, metals. P group elements except second B in the periodic table, simply called the transition elements. Example, Fe, Ni, Cu, Ti. Dynamic equilibrium, an equilibrium in which processes occur continuously with no net change, when 2 or more processes occur at the same rate so that no net change occurs. Effective collisions, collision between molecules resulting in a reaction, one in which the molecules collide with proper relative orientations and sufficient energy to react. Effective molality, the sum of the molalities of all solute particles in a solution. Effective nuclear charge, the nuclear charge experienced by the outermost electrons of an atom, the actual nuclear charge minus the effects of shielding due to inner shell electrons. Example, set of dx2y2 and dz2 orbitals. Those d orbitals within a set with lobes directed along the x, y and z axis. Electrical conductivity, ability to conduct electricity. Electrochemistry, study of chemical changes produced by electrical current and the production of electricity by chemical reactions. Electrodes, surfaces upon which oxidation and reduction half reactions occur in electrochemical cells. Electrode potentials, potentials E of half reactions as reductions versus the standard hydrogen electrode. Electrolysis, process that occurs in electrolytic cells. Electrolyte, a substance whose aqueous solutions conduct electricity. Electrolytic cells, electrochemical cells in which electrical energy causes non-spontaneous redox reactions to occur. An electrochemical cell in which chemical reactions are forced to occur by the application of an outside source of electrical energy. Electrolytic conduction, conduction of electrical current by ions through a solution or pure liquid. Electromagnetic radiation, energy that is propagated by means of electric and magnetic fields that oscillate in direction perpendicular to the direction of travel of the energy. Electromotive series, the relative order of tendencies for elements and their simple ions to act as oxidizing or reducing agents also called the activity series. Electron, a subatomic particle having a mass of 0.00054858 atomic mass unit and a charge of 1 minus. Electron affinity, the amount of energy absorbed in the process in which an electron is added to a neutral isolated gaseous atom to form a gaseous ion in which a 1 minus charge has a negative value if energy is released. Electron configuration, specific distribution of electrons in atomic orbitals of atoms or ions. Electron deficient compounds, compounds that contain at least one atom other than H that shares fewer than 8 electrons. Electronic transition, the transfer of an electron from one energy level to another. Electronegativity, a measure of the relative tendency of an atom to attract electrons to itself when chemically combined with another atom. Electronic geometry, the geometric arrangement of orbitals containing the shared and unshared electron pairs surrounding the central atom of a molecule or a polyatomic ion. Electrophile, positively charged or electron deficient. Electrophoresis, a technique for separation of ions by rate and direction of migration in an electric field. Electroplating, plating a metal onto a cathodic surface by electrolysis. Element, a substance that cannot be decomposed into simpler substances by chemical means. Eluent or eluent, the solvent used in the process of elution, as in liquid chromatography. Eluate, solvent or mobile phase which passes through a chromatographic column and removes the sample components from the stationary phase. Emission spectrum, spectrum associated with emission of electromagnetic radiation by atoms or other species resulting from electronic transitions from higher to lower energy states. Emulsifying agent, a substance that coats the particle of the dispersed phase and prevents the coagulation of colloidal particles, and emulsifier. Emulsion, colloidal suspension of a liquid in a liquid. Enantiomer, one of the two mirror image forms of an optically active molecule. Endothermic, describes the processes that absorbs heat energy. Endothermicity, the absorption of heat by a system as the process occurs. Endpoint, the point at which an indicator changes the color and a titration is stopped. Energy, the capacity to do work or transfer of heat. Enthalpy, the heat content of a specific amount of a substance defined as E is equal to PV. Entropy, a thermodynamic state or property that measures the degree of disorder or randomness of a system. Enzyme, a protein that acts as a catalyst in biological systems. Equation of state, an equation that describes the behavior of matter in a given state. The van der Waals equation describes the behavior of the gaseous state. Equilibrium or chemical equilibrium, a state of dynamic balance in which the rates of forward and reverse reactions are equal. The state of a system when neither forward or reverse reaction is thermodynamically favored. Equilibrium constant, a quantity that characterizes the position of equilibrium for a reversible reaction. Its magnitude is equal to the mass action expression at equilibrium. K varies with temperature. Equivalence point, the point at which chemically equivalent amounts of reactants have reacted. Equivalent weight, an oxidizing or reducing agent whose mass gains, oxidizing agents, or loses, reducing agents, 6.022 into 10 raised to 23 electrons in a redox reaction. The mass of an acid or a base that furnishes or reacts with 6.022 into 10 raised to 23 H3O plus or OH ions. Essential oil, a plant extract that has a distinctive odor or flavor. Ester, a compound of the general formula RCORI, where R and Ri may be the same or different and may be either aliphatic or aromatic. Ether, compound in which an oxygen atom is bonded to two alkyl or two aryl groups or one alkyl or one aryl group. Eutrophication, the undesirable overgrowth of vegetation caused by high concentrates of plant nutrients in bodies of water. Evaporization, vaporization of liquid below its boiling point. Evaporation rate, the rate at which a particular substance will vaporize, evaporate, when compared to the rate of a known substance such as ethyl ether. This term is especially useful for health and fire hazard considerations. Excited state, any state other than the ground state of an atom or a molecule. Exothermic, describes processes that release heat energy. Exothermicity, release of a heat by a system as the process occurs. Explosive, a chemical or compound that causes a sudden, almost instantaneous release of pressure, gas, heat, and light when subjected to sudden shock, pressure, high temperature, or applied potential. Explosive limits, the range of concentrations over which a flammable vapor mixed with proper ratios of air will ignite or explode if a source of ignition is provided. Extensive property, a property that depends upon the amount of material in a sample. Extrapolate, to estimate the value of a result outside the range of a series of known values, technique used in standard additions calibration procedure. Faraday, 1 Faraday of electricity corresponds to the charge on 6.022 into 10 raised to 23 electrons or 96,487 coulombs. Faraday's law of electrolysis. One equivalent weight of a substance is produced at each electrode during the passage of 96,487 coulombs of charge through an electrolytic cell. Fast neutron, a neutron ejected at high kinetic energy in a nuclear reaction. Fat, solid triester of glycerol and mostly saturated fatty acids. Fatty acids, an aliphatic acid, many can be obtained from animal fats. Ferromagnetism, the ability of a substance to become permanently magnetized by exposure to an external magnetic field. Film badge, a small patch of photographic film worn on clothing to detect and measure accumulated incident ionizing radiation. Flammable, a liquid as defined by NFPD and DOT as having a flash point below 37.8 degrees Celsius, that is 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Flash point, the temperature at which a liquid will yield enough flammable vapor to ignite. There are various recognized industrial testing methods, therefore, the methods used must be stated. Fluorescence, absorption of high energy radiation by a substance and subsequent emission of visible light. Fossil fuels, substances consisting largely of hydrocarbons derived from decay of organic materials under geological conditions of high pressure and temperature, that is metamorphism, includes coal, petroleum, natural gas, peat, and oil shale. Frash process, method by which elemental sulfur is mined or extracted. Sulfur is melted with superheated water at 170 degrees centigrade under high pressure and forced to the surface of the earth as a slurry. First law of thermodynamics. The total amount of energy in the universe is constant, also known as the law of conservation of energy. Energy is neither created nor destroyed in ordinary chemical reactions and physical changes. Flotation, method by which hydrophobic, water-repelling particles of an ore are separated from hydrophilic, water-attracting particles of a metallurgical pre-treatment process. Fluids, substances that flow freely, gases and liquids. Flux, A substance added to react with the charge or a product of its reduction in metallurgy, usually added to lower a melting point. Foam. Colloidal suspension of a gas in a liquid. Forbidden zone. A relatively large energy separation between an insulator's highest filled electron energy band and the next higher energy vacant band. Beginning in the fourth energy level, a set of 7 degenerate orbitals per energy level, higher in energy than s, p and d orbitals of the same energy level. Formal change. A method of counting electrons in a covalently bonded molecule or ion. Counts bonding electrons as though they were equally shared between the two atoms. Formula. Combination of symbols that indicates the chemical composition of a substance. Formula unit. The smallest repeating unit of a substance. The molecule for non-ionic substances. Formula weight. The mass of one formula unit of a substance in atomic mass units. Fractional distillation. The process in which a fractioning column is used in distillation apparatus to separate components of a liquid mixture that have different boiling points. Fractional precipitation. Removal of some ions from solution by precipitation while leaving other ions with similar properties in solution. Free energy. Gibbs free energy. The thermodynamic state function of a system that indicates the amount of energy available for the system to do useful work at constant temperature and pressure. Free energy change. The indicator of spontaneity of a process at constant temperature and pressure. If delta G is negative, the process is spontaneous. Free radical. A highly reactive chemical species carrying no charge and having a single unpaired electron in an orbital. Freezing point depression. The decrease in the freezing point of a solvent caused by the presence of a solute. Frequency. The number of repeating corresponding points on a wave that passes a given observation point per unit time. Fuel cells. Voltaic cells in which the reactants, usually gases, are supplied continuously. A voltaic cell that converts the chemical energy of a fuel and an oxidizing agent directly into electrical energy on a continuous basis. Functional group. A group of atoms that represents a potential reaction site in an organic compound.